if you're live streaming and nobody can understand what you're saying, are you in fact live streaming? If the show has no audience who can hear you, and yet they want to be there and hear you, the desire for the live stream is there, but the fact of being in a live stream is no longer available, as we learned last week. So I'm going to sit here hovering, talking until you guys reassure me that I have my, digitally enhanced audio without the extra static and such. It's like we invoked the gremlins last time. I appreciate that with our advertisements, pretending that we were going to be talking about cooking options with certain flatbread meals. I'm here to say that if you don't like pineapple on your pizza, I don't know how to help you. I've been informed by followers in Australia that down there, down under, they even put pineapple on shrimp, or vice versa, the shrimp on the pineapple, right? So the pineapple on the Barbie and the shrimp on the Barbie seem to go, never mind with the pizza bottom. They go together. In fact, you'd put pineapple on most things. A rogue wave is here, and he says, I can hear you. Wonderful. Okay, so tonight we're going to start with hot dogs and whether or not they're sandwiches. Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. They're here. They came back, even though they couldn't hear us last week. Guys, thank you so much, so much, so much for hanging out with us last week and teaching me how important it is that come rain, shine, static, the Ark is here on Fridays from 8 to 10 Central Time. So if we mess up, we're not going to start over again. We're going to sail smoothly through all of this. But everyone, thank you so much for hanging with us last week. And we are here again. We're going to try the category discussion, but hopefully do it better this time. Categorically better.
I think you invoked pineapple on pizza and the internet gods just rebelled and shut us down until you got that horrible idea out of your head.
It's still in my head. I like pineapple on pizza. We can do pine nuts and pears, right? Pine nuts and pears on pizza are really good.
No, see, you do pine nuts and pears are delicious, but then you say on pizza, it just doesn't work.
The fruit, is it the fruit?
It's a tart.
But see, it is funny, isn't it, that these things can divide people. I mean, I've had in all of the places that I advertise, and we do advertise very widely because we would love to have, a huge audience here. Although, actually, we realize what we get on these Friday nights on our proper live streams, which enable us to do the brilliant conversation that you were about to participate in. It's graduate level, right? It's like if you were me, if you were a student of mine at the University of Chicago taking a graduate class, this is about the size of the audience we'd have. So good on you, everyone. Show up on Friday night, your graduate level. and therefore I take license to like talk at any level I want because I figure you guys can keep up. I forgot what I was talking about. It is interesting. These are things that divide. I had people sending me hate mail on Gab over the question.
Of a pineapple pizza?
It's like truly Gab is an interesting place because if you post anything mildly like advertisingly provocative, you got 18 people disagreeing with you and one going yay like right.
Really? I haven't been there in ages.
Well,
should go take a look.
In sympathy, I'm sympathy with Andrew Torba in his effort to run Gab, but I haven't like cultivated that particular conversation. I'm still not sure about which conversation I'm trying to be in on Substack. There's so many overlapping ones. X is its own space.
Yeah. Who isn't on that?
Well, I like testing Grok. According to Grok, my reputation is intact. I'm very pleased to report that when I asked it, who is the best living scholar of medieval Marian devotion, I came second. After Mary Rubin, who appropriately the year 10 years before, my first book came out. Well, anyway, I know her from graduate school, right? She was a few years ahead of me in Cambridge, and she did a big book on Mary, in which she uses my research, in which I read beforehand. So, the subtext here is A, we all know each other, and B, so she's out there with the big broad book, and I'm there with the provocative, emotional, engagement book, and then Luigi Gambaro is there with his theological survey, and then there's a newer scholar whose book I need to go look up because she apparently won a prize and she's looking at late medieval devotion. I'm like, this is good company. Grok thinks I merit.
It's pretty cool that people are taking up that topic.
Well, it's a
devotion.
specific kind of field.
Yeah, not at the scholarly level. I mean, I've seen lots of kind of devotional books that people write over the past 50 years, and then of course there's the older ones that like Louis de Montfort. But the kinds of things that you're doing, really interesting. That Grok had, like, well, I mean, like you said, all of them, like 5 people who are doing all of this very scholarly research going back, a millennia, which is pretty fantastic.
This is why I live stream with you. Oh. See, boys and girls, this is what you need to do to get into the graduate class. Fair. There are actually more of us than just that list, and I mean, one of the reasons I'm thinking about it right now is I'm editing a volume for we're putting it together, and we hope it they accept it. But I was under contract for a volume with Brill, who's one of the major European scholarly publishers, and they have these series of companions to the medieval, how do they call it? Companions to the Christian tradition, right? And they're at 123 or so, right? They've been doing it for about 20 years, and so it's a pretty wide range of topics. And to put it together, I had to find the people that were interested in contributing in this context. But one of the sort of things that backfired over the past few years is all of the different publishers came out with these handbooks, right? Oxford, I published in the Oxford Mary Handbook. There's Cambridge have done handbooks. Brill is doing theirs, and there are a few others. So it's like we're at this place in the scholarship where there's so much out there. It's like this is an interesting problem for Grok and the other large language model search engines, which we will not categorize as artificial intelligence because they're not. They're simply large language model search engines, and in that sense, they can give us interesting information. We're at this point where there's so much information out there that it is actually helpful having a top level, search engine, which is what we've been using Google for, which is what we were using our library catalogs for all along, to collect out, it's like, where should I start? Because that's always what people don't know, right? Where should I start?
Well, you got this wonderful response from Grok about your scholarship and the other scholars. People used to go to Google, and there was a whole bunch of other early search engines around the same time. and they were all okay. You would get lots of information, but something changed over the past 5 years, where every time you tried to find information, you would just get bombarded with advertisements or magazine articles. They were pretending to be articles. They were just more advertisements trying to get you to buy stuff, and it was impossible to find anything. So I'm really encouraged by your results, and I might actually just try it as a search engine now.
If you think of it as, so this is a category problem, right? What is grok?
Yeah.
We're not we are completely unconvinced that it can write poetry. But
oh no, it can't. It can't. It gave a great facsimile, a very amusing facsimile, but no, it can't write it.
Right. So there are these problems. Our category theme, right, is here. We've got some responses on the vote about pineapple pizza. So Sanjuro says, "We be here. Pineapple and pizza is my favorite." Aha! I have one on my side.
You don't deserve pizza.
Silent Draco says, "Pignoli and pears, add Parmesan, no sauce." Yes. See.
That's a tart. That's a dessert. That's not a pizza.
It's the pine nut. The pine nuts and the pears are really good. And he's right. If you don't put tomato sauce on that, you put other.
It's a fruit pie.
It's not, no, but the thing is they don't. Okay, fruit and meat are really good together, and that doesn't make it a dessert. It makes it a savory with fruit.
But where's the meat? It was just pears,
it's chicken.
Pears and nuts.
There's the pine nuts. So these are. There's an Italian pizza restaurant in my neighborhood that they did these pine nuts and pears, and it was chicken meat, right? And it was Italian. It was the very flat, thin crust, not the deep dish stuffed
it was real
Chicago
pizza.
stuff. Right, yeah, it was Italian pizza. But, American pizza is not really what you get in Italy. In Italy, you get more like the true flatbread it's very, very thin and a sort of sprinkling of toppings. American toppings, fill it in.
Well, it depends. New York pizza was brought over by GIs that saw it in Italy. So that was kind of real pizza until they started putting all kinds of weird stuff on it. But then Tom Monahan took it to a whole new level. But the Domino's pizza guy. But
okay, so we are now happily inside of our topic more quickly this time than we were last time when I was trying to abstractly describe the metaphysical significance of categories and how we need to think about Aristotle. And no, we're going to start where we should have started last time, with clean and unclean animals. Which is where I was tangling myself up reading Mary Douglas last week, and I think I finished the book now, so I've calmed down. Right, when you're in the middle of the book, everything's popping out at you. But she starts with this question of what to do with the animals in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, right? And now I can't find where she's listing them, and she's doing it in the context of. See, is this a class or is this a live stream? Am I supposed to be entertaining? Am I supposed to be reading to you? All of these categories. Are we okay? So we did this whole thing of trying to give you guys the category for what we are as the Mosaic Ark, right? When we were trying last summer, it's like we're a cruise ship. It's like, what kind of cruise ship gives you lectures, graduate level lectures in philosophy, right? Rogue Wave says pineapple and pizza is okay in my book, but deep dish is a casserole, not a pizza. Now you guys are warming up. This is good.
Yeah. Casserole, actually, I wouldn't even go further than that. It's more like a bread bowl with cheese soup in it.
Okay, see, these are, and what we are going to try to demonstrate to you is why everybody freaks out and starts screaming taboo and cancel them, blasphemer wanting to stone you and throw you off cliffs when you break some of these categories. Right. Okay, so
I want to just really quick before you move on to the unclean animals, I just want to throw something out there for the people listening.
You're trying to make my class into a live stream and keep it interesting, aren't you?
All right, for the pineapple appreciators out there, I just want to throw out one word, and I want to get your reaction. Anchovies. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so Silent Draco's now joined us in YouTube too, as well as he wasn't he wasn't unauthorized. He says pignoli and pear with Parmesan and some basil, no sauce. Yes, and they also put chicken on it in Pizza Capri here in okay, anchovies. Yes, the big anchovy debate. Will you have salty fish on the pizza. See, I know anchovies, don't like them, don't really want them on my pizza. If you feel about if you feel about pineapple the way I feel about anchovies, fair, but why? Right? And this is what Mary Douglas writing back in, we're at the graduate level now, right? Because I'm going to tell you, 1966. So, I mean, it's interesting. Purity and Danger, I remembered it as richer than it actually is because I read it younger than I am now. She does have an interesting introduction to the problem of comparative religion in the opening part of the book. Kind of in the first chapter, she's trying to explain why people like there's Fraser with the Golden Bough and is it Robertson Smith. These guys writing in the 19th century, and they're in the midst of European exploration, right? Africa, the Pacific Islands, Australia, and they're all in, and they're doing it both as talk about category, right? Missionaries who are trying to talk to the people and bring them to Christ. They're doing it as exploitative labor people, as they are in the Congo right now, which is why all those Christians, may they rest in peace, got their heads chopped off the other day. Because as Evita explained very clearly in her podcast, which is way more professional than ours, the cobalt mining there is creating the social situation where these sort of massacres of warring groups are getting even incredibly brutal, which reminded me of Our Heart of Darkness, right? And Conrad showing the way in which the ivory and the rubber extraction was destroying the Congo 100 years ago. So we're still there, right? Now we're destroying the Congo with the extraction of cobalt to make these devices that we're talking on now. So in that context, you have people that will come to be calling themselves anthropologists, trying to figure out what counts as religion, what counts as magic, what counts as science, what counts as superstition. Again, more category questions, right? And the huge big category question they have is, or they put it in this context of from primitive to civilized, right? So what's the characteristics of primitive belief? They believe in progress, right? So have we progressed to monotheism and, rational belief? And, by the way, by the end of this, we're going to end up with, I guess, nothing but robots working from using cobalt. I'm not sure, right? Anchovies on Fridays and during Lent, they're a penitential food. Rogue Wave, yes, they're penitential. Okay. Yes. So if you have anchovies, it's penitential pizza. So do I need to slow down and unpack any of that? I was trying not to do what I did last week, which was take forever on the setup.
Well, you were talking about categories, and then you started talking about getting the cobalt.
Okay, so the huge category problem that Mary Douglas was playing with was this. It's down deep at the level of, one deep level is, do we see each other as human? Right, and that's the basic category. Are we humans or animals? And when you're encountering other human beings and you find that if you can learn to talk to them, which is like a first category of saying, if they're animals who can speak, then they must be human, right? The first layer there. But if you're talking to them and they start telling you about these witches that have cursed their flocks, and that's why the flocks are dying, and they're going to have to do some kind of, magical, superstitious to you practice to get rid of the witches, are they irrational and superstitious, or are they rational in their own terms? Are they capable of understanding the high-level metaphysical stuff that you're talking about in terms of monotheism, and they're polytheists? And I'm purposely keeping this all kind of scrambled and unclear, precisely because, ironically, since 1966, when Douglas was writing, and she's an anthropologist and she's trying to make all these category problems clear, it's gotten even worse in comparative religion and anthropology, to the extent that in some cases they're not even able to talk about like belief or ritual or magic or rationality or superstition at all, right? And the thing is, I think we have been in Substack, in watching things play out in X, in all of these like media culture wars that we've been in, witnessing the problem of the breakdown of all the categories over and over and over and over and over again.
People don't have a firm foundation, the people who are writing about these things. And I venture to guess the anthropologists themselves don't have a religious tradition they were raised in, to actually begin to compare religions, because they don't understand religion.
Okay, fair, and that's a good place to anchor people. You're very good at anchoring people. I gibber away, and you like distill it out, and it's like that's what it is.
Hopefully I'm not wrong.
Well, okay, so I said missionaries. A lot of them were Protestants, right? So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking about the anthropologists.
Well, okay, yeah, the anthropologists follow on the feet of the missionaries. Yeah, right. So there's waves of this interaction between the Europeans who are going out into, the field, right? And that's where I was like, there's the variety of categories of the Europeans. They go as missionaries, they go as mining extraction, what should we call them? I mean, they're the people that are still out there now mining cobalt, mining stuff in Australia, mining, Afghanistan, prospectors. No, but they're bigger. They're like the industrial level extraction technology guys.
Oh, there's a
word for this.
Depending on what they're looking for, they're different. There are different names.
Maybe the guys in the chat will help us. If you could give me the category that I'm trying to describe here, which is the industrialists who go out into the world and enslave or corrupt or brutalize the local populations in order to get the stuff that's in their land. And in the Congo, in the early 20th century, it was rubber from the trees and ivory from the elephants. Now in the Congo, it's cobalt.
Yeah, I'm gonna snidely call them resource managers.
That's an interesting category.
I'll bet that's what they refer to them as, but it's probably not as benign as the title suggests. There's probably quite a lot of coercion going on.
Spice miners. How's that? Whatever they are in Dune, right? It's at that level, right? It's like they go into have the giant machines that go in, grab the spice, and it fuels the world. And cobalt is basically one of our spices right now, because it's apparently necessary to the batteries in our phones and cars, and it's part of the electronic tech stuff. And their children mining it with baskets in the Congo right now. And so the reports that are going around right now of the Christians who were beheaded by the Muslims, it's in the context of competition over that extraction economy. Yeah. And in the middle of that, you're going to go and talk to the people in the Congo and find out that they have beliefs about witches and the breakdown of society and the differentiation between the sexes and things that are dangerous and taboo. And what Douglas tries to do in Purity and Danger is show that there's the reactions that people have to these ideas of pollution are usually reflecting something that is happening in their society. I actually said it clearly, right? Her main thesis is that the Purity and Danger beliefs come out of reactions to structures in their society. And so it's not so much that they're rational, but they are particular to the way in which things are organized socially for them. And that this feeds into their sense of, her big question was, why should pollution be associated with the sacred?
Well, pollution is not just your environment; it's also your social circle, your family. Outside ideas come in and change things for the worse, or from your perspective, they just change things. Period, and that's bad because you're destroying your tradition.
Okay, so I've set it up as if, okay, Sanjuro says spice harvesters. That makes them sound kind of benign, right? These are guys with scythes. Right?
That is, yeah.
That are
Natural resources management.
extraction. Yeah. I mean, we need a more powerful word for it, because it's like what they're doing is
And that's what they do. They obscure what they do, which is go terrorize people, scare them off their land, or just blatantly enslave them.
Right.
Or kill them and take their spot.
And so the irony of all of this is that the anthropologists, which I was describing, come into situations like that and then try to talk to people about their, beliefs about sex and gods and purity and such. But the anthropologists are actually aware of this now, right? I think the discipline is kind of folded in on itself based on my conversations and experience with talking with them some decades ago, but they were folding in on themselves because they couldn't see themselves as anything other than the enemy themselves, right? Because they were the civilization. They were representatives of the people that had come in and destroyed all of the cultures that they were then touching by being there as spice harvesters and missionaries. There was a couple in the University of Chicago who did a lot of work on Africa. And I learned, based on the ways in which conversations went in my department, our anthropology department, about Christianity, that for the most of the anthropologists, Christianity was nothing but the enemy, because they associated the missionaries with the ones who came in and destroyed the local folk beliefs.
They weren't always good.
Okay.
Even if there were Christians coming in to do that, I mean,
here's another category problem. Like, is all religion the same? Is all religion, and this is where Mary Douglas was starting from, this question of what is religion doing? Why are there, for example, in the Old Testament, these category issues over the clean and unclean animals that in the 19th century, they constantly tried to analyze them as hygienic, which is the way people, I think, still tend to think about it. It's like, oh, well, pork was bad for you. But in fact, most of them don't make sense that way, right? The hygienic explanation for the clean and unclean doesn't hold with the actual list. I
mean, it certainly wouldn't be a Christian view of Old Testament dietary laws. God said, don't eat this, but it's because he was trying to separate his people from the pagans, not because it was unhealthy. Because to say that, you would have to say, oh, God just wanted everybody to die, right? Except for his people, his chosen people, which doesn't sound right.
Here's a category that'll get people going. Which category of people are the good people? Yeah. In this story, right? The missionaries versus the primitives, or the Old Testament versus the New Testament, or here the clean and unclean animals. Okay, so it's a famous list, right? And I've got some pictures up here to help you think about it. The animals you can eat tend to be herd animals, right? You should not eat any abominable things. These are the animals you may eat. This is Deuteronomy 14, right?
I almost said like pineapple on pizza, but go on.
Food. I mean, the food taboos are interesting. It's like, and I'd say with pineapple on pizza, most people are responding with disgust, right? I'm not sure I'm disgusted by anchovies. I don't particularly. Yeah, maybe I am. I don't like the way they look, right? So people are responding with disgust. And this is where I was trying to go last week, and we didn't get there at all, right? It's interesting when your categories are broken and you're disgusted, and what you feel is disgust. And then you sit there and try to think about, why am I disgusted? What just broke that I have this disgust reaction, right? Okay, so here we have the clean and unclean animals. These are the animals you may eat. The ox, the sheep, the goat, the hart, the gazelle, the roebuck, the wild goat, the ibex, the antelope, and the mountain sheep. And I'm showing you some of these. I was trying to find Middle Eastern versions of these animals, and those were the ones that Google threw up for me. Right, so they're on the top four, right? Every animal that parts the hoof and has the hoof cloven in two and chews the cud among the animals you may eat. Yet of those that chew the cud or have the hoof cloven, you shall not eat these. The camel, We got the camel. Don't eat the camel. The hare. Here we have a hare. And the rock badger, which looks like what does it look like? A giant guinea pig? Because they chew the cud, but do not part the hoof and are unclean for you. Now, maybe you don't want to eat a camel, but it's, people eat rabbits and hares other places. The rock badgers, I mean, what Douglas talks through is saying, if you actually look at the way these categories work, they don't quite fall. The pig always says, oh, well, the pig, that's explained it, but it doesn't explain the rock badger, because the rock badger is somehow, I mean, the swine, because it parts the hoof but does not chew the cud, is unclean for you. Their flesh you shall not eat, and their carcasses you shall not touch. And then it goes on and lists fish and birds and things like that. But efforts to explain these categories in practical terms have tended to fail, interestingly.
Mm-hmm. Because there's no physical reason for it. It was a cultural reason.
But so they're abominable. And again, Douglas is trying to say, so what does that mean, abominable? So Rogue Wave says, I was recently introduced to the philosophy of Rene Girard, which has some similar concepts being discussed here, I think, taboos and such. Yes, we are big here on Rene Girard, and he deals with the scapegoat problem, right, which is at another layer of what we're trying to understand. Here, the primary category issue, so the clean and unclean, and what you're saying, Casey, is the Israelites following these dietary rules, among other things, separate themselves out from the people around them who do eat some of these animals. I mean, the pigs or the hares, or I don't know if anybody eats a rock badger, but
if you're hungry enough.
And then, of course, famously in Acts, Peter is shown a blanket filled with all these creatures, and God says to him, you could get to eat all of them, right? So it wipes out this particular category question, so that for Christians, all of these animals are clean. You can eat anything, including pineapple on your pizza,
and anchovies,
and shrimp on your pineapple.
This is kind of related, because Lent's coming up in like 11 or 12 days, and this question comes up particularly in the South in America every year. Is an alligator considered meat?
Yes.
And the answer is, the answer is no, it's not. You can eat it.
Apparently you can eat beaver tail too, because it counts as they swim. So yeah, so these are the sorts of things. One, it means medieval Europeans had an amazing fish diet. Because they whales and dolphins and eels and all these other kind of fish and stuff, because you need something to eat during Lent, but these kinds of categories become ridiculous quite easily, because alligator, why are you saying alligator is not meat, right? Because it swims?
It's a reptile, right? It's cold-blooded. It's a reptile, but then again, so is a chicken. So you can't eat chicken though. And
then you start realizing, wait a minute, why are these categories what they are? Some of them, okay, like these are herd animals, and we eat big feasts of all the cattle. I'm reading about Anglo-Saxon England right now, and apparently one of the things that the pagans did was have big feasts of beef. and when Gregory, so back in the day, missionaries didn't come in and say you can't eat your stuff. They said what Gregory the Great told Augustine was, well, if they're having these big oxen feast, right? They come, they slaughter all the cattle and have a giant steak fest. You could still have the steak fest, just don't dedicate it to the pagan gods. And the Anglo-Saxons like, great, steaks on the menu. We'll be Christian. I got distracted on the steak. I love steak.
Me too. I was just thinking they must have been proto-Texans. They're
Texas. We know what kind of animals are good to eat, and it's steak. Rattlesnake, I don't know. You can eat it if you want.
It tastes like chicken.
If you fry it like chicken, it sure does. If you cook everything the way Scots do and deep fry them, then everything tastes like chicken because you've cooked it.
That's true.
You've cooked it like chicken.
I did have alligator once. I had alligator tail once a long time ago, and it tastes like a pork chop. So that was one animal that didn't taste like chicken. It tasted like pork.
We had a Dixie kitchen here, but you had it blackened, so I wasn't sure what it tasted like. It was blackened. Anyway, if you try to make sense of people's food categories, they quickly become quite contentious, and it's hard. Well, here, look, maybe the clean and unclean animals is not the best one to go with. We'll go with a better one. Our hot dog sandwiches. Sanjuro, Anglo-Saxons, meat's back on the menu, boys. Exactly. Right. Silent Draco, it swims water. Some places you need the flexibility. Camel pizza. we're the guy, whistle pig stew. I have a woodchuck in my freezer right now. Haven't been brave enough to cook it. That's what the rock badger looks like, a woodchuck. That's what I was trying to think. It looks like a woodchuck.
People eat woodchuck?
Well, Sanjuro might. No, a rogue wave might. Okay, so the guy, they're getting it, right? They're getting it. So you start wondering why are some things okay? Apparently, Soylent Green is on the menu in some context right now.
So actually, I saw it. I was shopping on Amazon for certain specialty grocery items, and this product called Soylent came up, and I said, "What are they thinking? That's real." It's like a protein drink.
Right. It's like Soylent. They cannot not be referring to that movie. As in Soylent Green is people, oh golly, Charlton Heston is taking Soylent Green is people, and there's apparently some philosopher in Europe who's been like soberly suggesting this as, oh yes, we should, we'll deal with our food shortage, which doesn't seem to exist except for when you poison everybody's food. We'll deal with the food shortage by eating people. Right. Okay, come on. Yeah. Category problem here. Yes, there have been cannibals. Yes, the missionaries and the conquistadores with their missionaries convinced the people of the New World that it was a bad thing to eat people.
Did the Mayan and the Aztec, did they actually eat people? Mm-hmm. I mean, the priests did when they sacrificed them, but did the others do?
Well, according to Bernal Diaz in his account of the conquest of Mexico, they ate them with tomatoes and chilies.
Oh,
the thing is, it does seem they eat the long, like legs and stuff.
Oh, good grief!
Right. There's a fair amount of muscle, and these are the people they're eating are. I mean, what Diaz he was with Cortez, and what they saw were people being in cages, being fattened up to be sent for the sacrifices. Oh, wow. I think they ate them, and I mean, there's enough accounts in the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries of Robinson Crusoe is really worried about getting eaten in his story.
Yeah, wasn't one of the Rockefellers captured by a tribe of cannibals back in the early 1960s?
I don't know. However, it's a thing. So, but obviously for these people, and then there can be, the layers of category of. I think I saw a Robinson Crusoe movie where it was told from Friday's perspective, and Crusoe comes upon them eating one of their companions who's been killed, and they're like honoring him by eating him. So, the category of we eat people, but it's for, ritual, remembrance purposes as opposed to enemies that we're killing for meat. There's a range of the practices may be the same thing, but the reasons for it that people give may vary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which brings us back to hot dogs. What did we just do?
We don't know what's in those hot dogs.
Okay, Sanjuro is saying, as a Mexican, if you're going to eat people, a taco's kind of nice. So we need to put them on tacos.
This is so gross. Oh my God.
Why is it gross? Are you disgusted?
Yes, I'm disgusted. I am thoroughly disgusted.
And we've clearly broken through some of your categories, not maybe with anchovies.
You're right.
You thought you could get us with anchovies. I got you with cannibalism. Never mind rock badgers, right? Will you eat people? Or hot
Yeah.
dogs, or hot dog. I mean, we thought we were going to have the explosive conversation here about hot dogs as a category. Okay. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
A sandwich is a meat between two pieces of bread. Originally, that's the original sandwich, right?
Practice. Presumably what Sandwich was doing and wanting the practice. Presumably what Sandwich was doing and wanting the bread between the meat and cheese between the bread was like making a double trencher or something. Maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know, right? But
because he was the rumor was he was playing cards and wanted something quick. And then of course your hands would stay dry.
So he broke a category in order to make a sandwich. Because he wanted to, like, he was breaking categories of proper dining, that's for sure.
When you're an earl, you kind of make your own rules though, don't you?
Well, how rude. How rude of him to eat, with his hands. Actually, that people did that in the Middle Ages too. That's why they had finger bowls to clean their fingers. Whereas, you'd be just barbaric if you licked them or something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Sanjuro and Rogue Wave are now having conversations about iguana. Silent Draco says, hey, guys, help us with the hot dog question.
Okay, it's
the chat is having more fun than we are this time.
Just popped into my head where they were eating the big iguana.
Needs salt.
Yeah, needs salt. It needs garlic.
Are you really enjoying that? Yeah, needs garlic. Does he say garlic or salt? Anyway,
I think it's garlic.
Okay, so Silent Draco is now being worried about being eaten by Sanjuro and Rogue Wave, who are cooking up the woodchuck and the iguana. Okay, I had never heard the is a hot dog a sandwich question, and I was like, wow, okay. So my first thought was, well, no, it's not, because it's round, right? The sausage, the meat is round, and it seems like a sandwich should have sliced meat that's flat. But then, if it's the folded thing, like, then I realized tacos, right? They're a flat tortilla folded. And
which is more like pizza, right? More like a flat bread.
Okay, so does a sandwich need to be, is it leavened or unleavened bread, which would in fact make a hot dog, it's on a bun, which is leavened, so it's fluffy, right? So hamburgers are sandwiches, except for they're not the right shape because they're round. We also you found us a Peeps hot dog sandwich.
Yeah, that's from a Reddit called Food Crimes. I thought that was cute.
Oh, well, okay, so it's like the Peeps are sweet marshmallows, right? So talk about pineapple on pizza. You can have Peeps on the hot dog. There was someone in the who commented on the poster I put up in X for our live stream tonight, who was objecting to the Bitmoji vision, not of us in the hot dog, which, the categories of what Bitmojis do with the characters that you insert yourselves into those cartoons with. But he was objecting to the ketchup on the hot dog, which was like, okay, so instead of mustard on the hot dog, or if you are, I think one of the hot dogs you have here, the full range of toppings, which I am not a true Chicagoan, I cannot tell you off the top of my head what properly goes on a hot dog.
It's missing sport peppers, but yeah.
But what else goes on a proper hot dog?
Relish on a Chicago dog. It's relish, onions, sport peppers. I think sauerkraut.
Yeah.
Mustard and ketchup. I used to make these. I worked in a diner once that served them.
You're more Chicagoan than I am. I am not a true Chicagoan. It's meat and stuff inside bread. Hot dogs can be sandwiches if they feel left out. Although I think they can exist in their own category just fine.
I don't think they are. I don't think hot dogs are sandwiches, because I mean, if you go to Germany, they sell these long sausages like hot dogs, but they're these tiny little buns and they completely overlap. And the bread is just the bread, the handle. Yeah, it's like a sausage handle
for the sausage. Well, okay, so these are, at least the guys, they've gone on to, eating iguanas and woodchucks, so they're clearly not going to be bothered by our hot dog category.
Oh, the idea of eating a woodchuck is going to just haunt me. The last time I saw one, it had rabies, so... check your woodchuck. But so, one of the interesting puzzles that we've had with our global multiculturalism is this,
oh, we'll not have the interesting cuisine from all of these cultures. And then the first thing, for example, when people not so long ago were wanting to make fun of Indians and were pointing out some of the things they eat and the way they cook and such, that you will instantly, I think, by default go to the yucky food that people are willing to eat.
Yeah.
They're going to make us eat bugs. So they want us not to be human anymore because people don't eat bugs, right? And
the only people I know who would not be grossed out about anything would be the Chinese. Now, the Chinese people I know, they're very proud of the weird things that they eat.
The bird's nest and yes, and I do confess that the food in proper Chinatown, which everyone says is proper Chinese food, I prefer the Americanized Chinese food. I confess. And I suspect, right, English curry is Englishized curry. It's not necessarily what people eat in the subcontinent.
But there's medieval recipes for something like curry. So they just took the spices from India and took, I think, what was in English. I'll have to find it and show it to you. I found it on Max Miller's Tasting History. But yeah, there was a very old recipe for that.
Oh, yeah, all the spices in medieval cooking are Indian. That was kind of the point of the spice trade because that's where they came from. Yeah, no, it's hilarious that the reason for the expansion of Europe and becoming spice miners was initially the spices coming from India. And yes, they were things like, I actually did some cooking, the medieval cooking, and you're right that they're mainly the East Asian spices. That's what the pepper and things like that. I mean, even things that we've normalized into being like salt and pepper that you have to have. That the pepper is a Asian spice.
Oh, the type of pepper they use now. I think they used the European version called the long pepper before then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. Well, we're clearly not. We found some categories that are sort of challenging and thoughtful. Maybe we need to do some harder ones. You think?
Okay.
The food one is illustrative of the question, but it's not triggering enough.
And it's making me hungry.
Okay, so now we have nationality, which is where we started with all of this. And we were trying to get everyone to understand that you are in your gut convinced that you know what a nation is. But we contend, at least I contend, and I'm trying to convince her, that you are doing the same kind of thing with nation as you are doing with sandwich.
I look forward to hearing this.
Well, that's my entire claim. there's if you want layers, oh my goodness, right? But no, okay. So look, we'll go back to the sandwiches. So we had
so the sandwiches have what's your element of a sandwich is what you're saying.
Well,
what are the elements?
Right, and we have here, in our range of sandwiches, the hamburger. So it's bread and it's a patty and such. But I remember when the first time I heard someone call like a McDonald's a hamburger sandwich, and I'm like,
yeah, that's right. That's what it's called.
They are sandwiches. I'd never thought of them as sandwiches before, right? So,
yeah,
as compared with what's this one? You had the multi-meat one next to it.
Oh, the muffaletta.
I didn't even know what that is. What's a muffaletta? Your benefit of having worked in a sandwich making place is helping you here.
I didn't make muffalettas. That's a New Orleans specialty, and it's just a huge amount of like cheese and different kinds of meat. And gosh, is there anchovies on there too? I'm not even sure. I've never had one, but yeah, it's an impressive constructed sandwich.
That looked okay. And then we have a meatball sandwich. Meatloaf. I mean, I grew up with meatloaf sandwiches, which is like a double. It's like it's already got bread mixed in, which is why it's meatloaf, and then you put it on bread. and ketchup, lots of ketchup, the meatloaf sandwich. But here we have a meatball sandwich, right? So does the meat need to be flat? Does it need to be like deli sliced in order for it to be a sandwich? Or can it be either patties or balls, right? And then we have a classic Subway. So the bun is a long, thin one, and we've got sliced meat and such, but it's kind of peeking out. So to me, the Subway sandwich is rather close to the hot dog. The hot dog's just not flat. Right, but the bun is the same shape as a Subway.
Right. I think the American hot dog definitely, but the Frankfurter, if you get in Frankfurt, it's probably not a sandwich, but it's more like a sandwich here. The meatball sandwich to me reminds me of the trenchers you just described.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a bread bowl with basically sauce and meat and
Right.
or stew in it. This is a tomato and beef stew in your trencher. That's a meatball sub.
And we so clearly meat, starch, and protein seem to fit together in people's heads, but most people,
Mm-hmm.
I think, would not call a taco a sandwich, even though it basically
No,
is.
it's its own category, I think.
Yeah, so this, okay,
You're not,
this is
well, because
absolutely proving my point. Your conviction, you and generally, our conviction that we know what a nation is exactly the same as that we know what a sandwich is. And they're going to be purists and say, no, 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 only this is a sandwich. There's only, the purist will say there's only one sandwich in this collection of eight options here, right? That you have, and you chose these very well. That the folded taco versus the flat one, right? It's like some of them are folded, so you eat them like a
yeah.
sandwich, but others are flat, so you don't eat them like a sandwich unless you
Well,
fold them up, and then they become a
the
sandwich.
flat ones you just close them together like that.
And then they're a
It's
sandwich.
basically to hold the meat, but it's not two pieces together with meat in the middle, the way the old sandwich created it. It's different. It's more like a pizza that you would just fold and eat so that the toppings don't fall off.
We could have included heroes in here too. That's a possibility.
It's the same thing. I say hero, a hoagie, and a sub are all the same thing.
No, but the heroes are made out of a flatbread that you fold.
Oh, hero. Oh, okay.
Not hero,
the Greek
heroes.
one. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Greek
You
ones. Yeah,
slice it off of the.
Yeah, right. It's similar to a taco. Not the American, not Taco Bell type, not crispy type. Which
Now
they
we've made the guys hungry. Their muffaletta originated in Italy.
Too.
Pickled veggies, meat dressing. Hard, and Draco saying hard taco equals frag grenade. Yeah, you bite into the hard taco and it goes, yeah, which is really fun when you're a kid.
Yeah.
But then all the bottom falls out, right? And you can't eat them.
Yeah, you have to kind of do this,
Right.
The things that the traditional Mexican.
See, my definition of sandwich is clearly more expansive than yours is, because you keep decategorizing these and saying they're just pizza, they're just folded pizzas, and I say the taco is the type of sandwich. In my category, it fits in sandwich.
Your category's wrong.
And then we have the hot dog and the peeps, which we'll say that's outside of everybody's bound.
Yeah, that's not
sandwich.
A sandwich of any kind.
But we have the hot dog and the bun,
yeah,
which it could be like the meatball sandwiches, but you said the meatball sandwiches are more like a bread bowl. Okay.
Right, because it's got sauce. It's more like a stew. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So demonstration of the difficulty of defining sandwich to persuade even the two of us, right? Now let's, nation. Okay, so this is actually where we meant to be this time last week when we didn't get here, but we have now through the your hot dog path. Via woodchucks and iguanas too, right? Okay, so in the conversation about nation, there have been various statements made to the effect of, nation is only, and if you do it in the sandwich version, it's like a nation is kinship and territory and maybe history. Okay, so my definition of nation tends to not be absolutely everybody's. I'm trying to give the regular definition. So it's like bread, sliced meat, flat. As far as I'm concerned,
two pieces of bread.
Two pieces of bread. Yeah. It has to be two pieces of bread.
It has to be two pieces of bread with barrel around it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's kinship, territory. What is the other one?
Language. Culture?
Maybe language. Oh well. Language. See, I default to Tolkien's definition of nation, which was language and history. and you know, because intermarriage happens a lot, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we have complicated histories of everybody who's in the American
but that's
nation,
but that's
because
also
we've
culture,
been,
isn't it?
well, but
Like,
genealogy, right? It's like, okay, so here we have Casey is she's working in that diner. Which did you say?
I've worked in both, actually.
Oh,
I worked at
okay.
a Subway once.
She's got
Matter of fact,
experience, right?
I have sandwich making
Sandwich. You
experience.
got sandwich making experience, and so it's like, is it a particular shape of bun? Is it a particular shape of meat? Is it a particular, you know, layering of toppings? It whether you hold it with your hands, you eat it. If you eat the sandwich with a fork, is it still a sandwich?
Yes, but you're a psychopath.
Okay, so we came up with some examples to confound the definition nation in the way that people are defining it. Okay, first example, Elon Musk. What is he?
African American.
Break that down a bit.
That's just not going to not be funny. I'm sorry.
Flat bread with mustard version of what? Okay, he's white, which would put him in one people's category of he belongs in the white nation, but he's from Africa, so that's it. He lives in
the white nation.
I assume he's an American citizen now. Is he American citizen now?
He is an American citizen.
Okay, he's an American citizen, white, and from Africa.
Yes.
Is he a hot dog or is he a hamburger sandwich? No, would people look at Elon Musk and say he's American? Is he American? Is he American in any sense?
What's interesting about Musk and all people,
he speaks English. That's one.
White-skinned people from South Africa, is that no one would say that they were African because of their color, which is weird because their families have been there for 400 years.
Right.
The Dutch arrived in the 1600s.
Yeah. So they're Dutch. So he's not even English, right? Musk what kind of name is that? Elon. What kind of name is that?
Elon was actually, his mother mentioned that recently on Twitter. She said she was looking through family names, and I think it was a family name. Somebody had it at some point.
But it was a Dutch name?
But I don't know. So,
but this is the South Africans, the white South Africans. There's Boers, but there's also English, right?
Right.
Because the English moved in, who fought the Boers. The English,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
The English put them in concentration camps.
Yes.
The whites.
Yes, they did.
The white English put the white Boers in concentration camps.
But Musk had an English grandmother.
Okay, but just hold everybody, hold that thought. Back when, Joseph Conrad, who writes beautiful English prose, who actually is Polish, right, is writing Heart of Darkness to complain about the way in which all Europe is treating the Congo at the very same time that the British are down in South Africa fighting the Boers. Right. I got my dates on the Boer War right because they want them off the land because they want the minerals. Oh, wait a minute. Have we found the definition of nation goes in whether or not you get the minerals?
Or whether or not you have the minerals.
Whether or not you, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Silent Draco saying blood, soil, language, faith, right? But what we're just demonstrating is the sandwich has a variety of ingredients, and it's like which one's necessary to make it a sandwich.
Blood, soil, language, faith in Northern Ireland means not the same faith.
Well,
they've all got the same claim.
Blood.
So there's lots of places like that.
But that means Musk is not American. He's not. His family's not from here.
He's not. No, he's not. He's an American citizen, but he's not. It's culturally, ethnically, he's not American. He's South African. But a lot of Black Americans.
But what about these white guys, the white boys that want to make one nation out of the whites?
So who wants to do that?
Apparently, there are people that do. and Musk was, associated with them because of that gesture he made in at a particular moment in the inauguration, and everyone said, "Oh, he wants to be a Nazi," which means he would want all of the white people, but he's not an American, so which white? Okay, anyway, example number 2, the couple with the Irish glasses in St. Patrick's Day celebration.
Yes, it's African-American family in Savannah. I don't know who they are. I just found this on an image search on Bing. And Savannah has one of the oldest St. Patrick's Day parades in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
I think, and I think it's either that one or San Juan, Puerto Rico's that might be actually older than New York City's. But yeah, there's lots of Black people, lots of Black Americans that live in Georgia, and they like going to this parade. And for all I know, they very well may be descended from Irish
They
people
probably
too,
are,
because
right?
there was a lot of very poor Irish and Irish slaves that
Right.
came in at the same time the African slaves did.
Right.
They tended to die quicker. They had no immunity to tropical diseads, but
The
they
Irish.
didn't all die.
The Irish.
Yeah, the Irish. Yeah.
So it makes a lot. I mean, it's
so-
like, yes, the indentured servants, as it
Oh,
were.
they were,
We
well,
call
they
them
were also
H-1Bs
slaves,
now.
though. Yeah.
No, well,
Yeah.
the indentured servitude of the Irish in the same region, which is where we've talked about the problem of, the white and the black comes out of trying to make sure that the different groups in the labor force feel at odds with each other. You
Yeah.
invent racism to make sure that your workers don't band up against you and
Well, that's where I think that's where the term white person came from. What it really meant is a term that doesn't get used anymore. It was used frequently up till about 25 years ago. Was WASP. You're white Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
The WASPs, though, those are upper class, right? The premise is they're like Episcopalian and Presbyterian.
That's what they were doing. They were separating all the masses of white Irish poor.
Oh yes, not poor Catholics, right? Yeah,
right, Catholics,
yes.
but also poor Catholics, and
not Polish and German.
No, they were Irish mostly in Georgia at the time.
Well, I mean, but we have a big parade here, right? And it's there's a lot of Irish in Chicago.
Yeah.
But I was just walking past the Catholic church in my neighborhood, and it was Irish. It was an Irish and German parish when it was founded. Yes.
Yeah.
In the 19th century.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they wanted to keep people fighting against each other, so they created this. It was probably a multi-tiered system, social system, but yeah, the bottom rung was white Irish Catholics and Black people. That was it.
So here they are celebrating St. Patrick's Day.
Celebrating St. Patrick's Day,
right?
All together, which is kind of nice.
And I can immediately. I mean, Eddie Murphy springs to mind, right? You could think.
Yeah.
One of my friends from college who was Black, but would say, I'm related to everybody, right? I'm Irish. I'm African. I mean, people who understand recognize that our American Blacks are American Blacks because they're mixed up with the rest of us.
Yeah.
In ways that obviously the newer immigrants from Africa, the Nigerians, and we have a lot of Nigerians and neighbors, recognize they're not the same people. No, any more than we would say, you just said Elon Musk is not American because he's South African. And the Nigerians that come here, they recognize themselves as Nigerian. They're not Black Americans. They're Nigerians.
Right. Right.
So skin color completely fails.
It does,
as a sorter on this.
The immigrants from Africa, the Black immigrants from Africa, and I've met quite a few of them, they refer to themselves as African. They infrequently refer to themselves by their specific countries that they come to. They would more say we're African and we're from Africa, at least the ones I've met. But I doubt they would say Elon Musk was African.
Fair.
Something tells me they didn't say that.
Well, I think the thing is,
I didn't ask them, so I can't speak for them. But just the vibe I get from the very fact that it's a joke that he's the most famous African American in the world. That's the reason it's funny. It's because he's white, right?
Right.
At least
he's not American.
He's pale. And he's not American, right? And he's not American. It's not Black, and he's not ethnic African or American, right? But he is ethnically South African, as in the country of South Africa, right?
But means Dutch. Okay, yeah. So Silent Draco, look at the cemeteries in Savannah too. Irish were cheap. Yeah, so it's part of the labor force, but right. I mean, it's a good example choosing this couple from that parade in that part of our country. Yeah. To say, look, that's they have just as much association with the Irish as the whites that aren't even Irish. Rogue Wave said, "Are Italians white?" Well, ha ha ha. You won't get us that easily. So we could say, maybe skin color doesn't really work.
It's not skin color. It's a class thing.
It's a class thing, regional where they've lived. I mean,
yeah.
I think I in one of our newsletters, I reposted my most famous blog post is Lies of the Left, White Nationalism, because of the polling balls. And I go through I go through Roger Scruton's discussion of what nation means, and a good deal of it is, I mean, it's not the pirate base, right? The ship people who go from port to port and live pirate like Elon Musk, right? Tend to think in a cosmopolitan fashion because they don't belong on the land. They belong in the airports, right? Whereas the nations live on the land, and the sort of commitment to cultivating a home and keeping the properties and our territories and our cities and that feeling. I mean, a lot of what we're feeling, the globalists versus the nations, is the mariners versus the land people who live on the land and cultivate it, quite literally.
Okay, what about sea nations though, like England or Venice? Japan.
Well, Japan actually has a territory that they recognize as their own, and they kept everybody out of it for centuries. So
no, they do. They do. So does Venice. So does England.
Japan is an island nation rather than a. Okay, so England. Don't go there because we'll never get out, because I'm making my syllabus for Anglo-Saxons, and we'll talk about that later. Okay. Venice is interesting because it was a kind of refugee status. They were fleeing from the Huns, and they settled in the lagoon
when they started,
and they end up with no real contado, right? They don't really have a landed territory. So you're right that, interestingly, the United States used them as something of a model for ourselves. The United States is, to the rest of the world, a pirate maritime nation.
What does that mean?
We are a ship power.
Oh, a ship power.
We exist as a navy, a marine, a maritime, a merchant navy. There's a really great, I'm so easy to distract. There's a really great X account right now, John Conrad, I think his name is, who's doing some really excellent posting. He's a ship captain, I think, doing some excellent meditations on the importance of the merchant marine and our shipping capacity and such. We exist insofar as we are a power. We're a maritime power, because otherwise, it's like we're just, we don't interact with anybody else except Canada and Mexico directly. So we're mainly interacting with people through our ships.
Interesting. I was just thinking of Venice, how it created its own land and then became a sea power, because the Dutch did the same thing.
The Dutch are like them, yeah, that they don't really have the land, so they have to be the ship powers. And the thing is, neither Venice nor the Dutch, I mean, South Africa is an interesting exception. They don't really go inland very much, right? The Dutch, just like they were on Manhattan here, and then they traded it for a different island with spice on it.
Oh, was it Grenada?
And they traded it for a nutmeg island, I think.
I think that's Grenada. Yeah. Huh.
And so those are good counterexamples. But the people, are where they've lived for centuries, and that that feeling of nation and territory is important. Okay, so religion, we've had. But the Boers made South Africa habitable. Okay, so this is how we start confounding the categories, and we're going to end up with hot dogs and meatball sandwiches soon. A boy holding an icon.
Oh, that's the Palestinian boy, Christian. Yeah.
So the faith is the Palestinian Christians Palestinian?
Well, sure.
Why did you put this one in here? You chose these.
Well, because everybody assumes Palestinians are all Muslims, but the Christian Palestinians, which were just Jews that converted to Christianity at the time of Christ, have been there a very long time. They've been there before the Muslims were even invented.
Well, even using Jew as a category so plainly is a problem, right?
Right.
the people who were living there during the Roman Empire, and
Yeah.
the Jews themselves were diaspora people that they'd spread out and, intermarried and
Hmm.
collected, all like the Alexandrians, right?
Yes.
So they were, whatever category they are as a people. So these
Hmm.
Palestinian Christians are more Palestinian than the Israelis who went to take over that territory.
Well, the Israelis don't want to take a lot of territory, all European.
Right.
They are.
I know.
So it's
So in what
it's
sense is Israel a
yeah,
nation? Oh, now we just called a taco a
right,
sandwich. Right.
right, because they don't have a land, so they wanted to get one, and they got one, and now they want a bigger one,
Well, they wanted
which
a land
is a
because
problem.
of, look, we just established that the Dutch and the Venetians don't have land, right? They
Hmm.
wanted one because of the way the 19th century developed the argument about what nation means. And so there's the people
It's
and the
had to be land.
language and the history. Oh, we need a territory too. And so the, you know, but they're not going to just live in any territory that they've been inhabiting. Where do those people from Savannah belong?
Probably Savannah. They're American. I mean, they're
Right.
Georgian, right?
Right. So why, the Jews in Poland in the 20th century didn't feel Polish.
Well, they didn't feel Polish because they weren't. They were Jews living in Poland. That's how they would probably define themselves, right?
Right. But I mean, okay. All descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth in some combination. Well, yes, everybody in Palestine. We all are. We all came off the ark. And then the categorization in which nations count. I just, okay. One last one. The girl with the Israeli flag.
Oh, yeah, the little Ethiopian girl,
Oh no,
right?
wait.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant the Jewish girl. She's
Is
from
she Israeli?
Ethiopia.
She's got an Israeli flag, but she's from
Yeah,
Ethiopia. So which is
this
she?
was
Is
yeah.
she as Israeli as Elon Musk is American?
They were Jews living in Ethiopia. Ethiopia was a Christian country from going back to the time of Christ, but there were Jews living in Ethiopia
The
at
Ethiopians
that
were the
time
first
too.
Christian converts because the eunuch
Right,
that Philip
right.
baptizes.
So this little girl would be one of the families that didn't convert,
Mm,
and they've been living in Ethiopia since that time and since before that time. And
that sounds like they're
they
pretty Ethiopian. I mean,
they would
what you
say
found, I
they
mean,
would
this was a good
they would
example.
say
The
this is interesting.
Palestinian
They would
Christian boy and the Ethiopian Jewish girl, and they
yeah,
both don't fit in most people's, certainly not
and
black
they
and
didn't.
white, and the category of
She
which
didn't fit
nation they
in.
belong to.
She didn't fit in Israel either until I think they rescued the state of Israel rescued some of the Ethiopians, some of the Jews in Ethiopia, but they saw them as Ethiopian Jews, not Jews in Ethiopia,
Right.
which is interesting because if there were Polish Jews, they would be Jews living in Poland. Come on, you're right on over. You don't have to convert. But these Ethiopians were made to go through a conversion, as I understand it,
Oh,
when they
right.
were
So
brought to Israel.
the European Jews who moved to Israel are just
Right?
Israelis. But
Kind of elitist.
the Ethiopian Jews who moved to Israel have to be re-Jewed,
Something, yeah, something like that. And I'm
or
not Jewish, so I can't.
de-Ethiopianized, right?
But yeah, yeah, no, they had to be go through a conversion.
They had to
That
convert to
was
Judaism, even though they were
the
Jewish,
Jews had to convert to Judaism because
even though their traditions were
yeah.
back to before ancient, from the the ancient diaspora of the people.
If we have any Israelis out there who can explain this to us any better, but it has something to do with a religious body in Israel that controls people who can return, and they control other things too, like who can marry who. Seriously, like some marriages have been annulled because they were from tribes that weren't allowed to marry each other. It's really strange, but I think it had something to do with this governing religious body in Israel that said, no, that's not good enough. They'll have to convert. And indeed, they didn't bring all of the Jews over. Only some of them came over.
Mm-hmm.
Only some of them were brought. And I don't know why the people who were brought over were selected and others weren't. But
Because everyone knows what a sandwich is. No, it's like the
Right.
same. The same. I was really
Yeah.
grateful to. It was VA Boston who came up with that in our chat, right? And I was like, that's the example that you need, because it's. I mean, for most people, it's a fairly neutral problem. It's like it's a it's a hot dog sandwich. Who cares, right? Turn into this kind of question, right? You think you have the ideal type that is the definition, and then a good deal of your testing is how far out am I willing to take that definition before it breaks? And then this is no longer, the Peeps hot dog is not a sandwich. And then finding out that we can't at root explain the definition in a way that excludes all exceptions.
Yeah, we're all using the same words but have a different dictionary.
Right. But even on, I mean, not even like preferences of what you put on, pizza, right? We can't, we can, and this, I mean, it means it's philosophically and metaphysically fascinating, because you're saying, can I define a dog? Oh, well, it's all these things. And then, it's like, well, what about this? And then you start realizing our ability to categorize is, I suppose, bounded by our recognition that it feels both natural, right? It's like that is actually essentially what it is, and artificial at the same time. Like, well, we've defined it that way, and so it's an invention of ours. So you can expand the category if you want. Yes, those people that came here with their families yesterday can be real Americans, even though the others of us are saying, no, my family's been here for 400 years, that we're the real Americans.
I'm thinking of that cute little picture somebody posted last year, or it was a video of an escaped donkey that took up with a tribe of zebras.
Oh, elk! Isn't there's one that was living with elk? Yeah, the donkey living with the elk. That donkey believes it's an elk, or that donkey it socially is an elk, right?
It was, yeah, and and they were all looking back at the camera, and then they all turned at the same time and just trotted off, and the donkey was right there with them, and he was running just exactly like them in the exact same formation. It's like, yeah, this thing actually thinks it's part of that tribe now.
It is. For practical reasons, it is, but it's a donkey, right? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So these kinds of examples show the fuzziness of the categories, ultimately, even though we're convinced that we know what they mean. Joan of Arc and a female soldier.
Oh, is yeah, there that was such a really cool one?
Yes.
Because look at her. Look at her armor. It's an Israeli soldier, and she's standing against a kind of a blondish brick wall that looks similar to the castle Joan of Arc's painted its so
there they are. One Christian, cool. One Jewish.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. One's.
Are they soldiers?
Are they soldiers? Well, that's a whole, for me, that's a whole nother topic of whether a female soldier is actually a soldier or just, backup for the actual soldiers.
Well, see, I did ask the question that in those terms for that reason.
Yeah.
Right. Are these, okay, so Joan wearing armor, she did wear armor. We do know she wore armor. Allegedly, according to her trial, she never killed anyone.
No, she was leading other people.
Right.
And she was, and I also read recently that she would cry over the fallen English. She would pray over them.
Right. So she led an army. It's actually ennobled by Charles, even though he ditches her later. Complicated story, right? She's from the border region in Burgundy. So she's actually from the territory that the English have taken over. So technically she's a traitor. to the region that the lords that she's living under held allegiance. One of my friends was reading about her trial recently, was saying it was clear that she's hearing voices, and so the English are in a kind of conundrum, because if the voices are actually from God, the English don't deserve to be in France, which is kind of problematic for them because they claim that they should be. But for Charles, the Dauphin, she's a girl. They test her for her virginity, and she gets sniffy at her trial, saying, we already passed this test in Poitiers. What are you talking about? But there's all these. I mean, she confounds everybody's categories, right? She's a peasant.
Right.
She should not be ennobled. She's a woman. She should not be fighting and wearing armor. I mean, ultimately, the case against her, they end up executing her as a relapsed heretic because she puts on men's clothes again.
Her mother fought for 20 years after her execution to clear her name, and she finally did.
Yes.
That is a strong mama.
Well, yeah, the retrial documents are very interesting because her companions testify on her behalf. But so the sort of the mystique of Joan is specifically because she breaks all of the categories. She cross-dresses. Yes. She's a peasant who seems to have great theological training, but she didn't. Well, she does. Her answers are theologically quite strong in her trial. She's a warrior, but she doesn't actually fight. Right?
Right. Well, our generals rarely fight either, but they must have. I mean, she must have terrified them. I mean, a 14-year-old girl who's speaking like a theologian and can
she's a bit older than that. She's more like 19, but yeah.
Yeah, you can write and shoot like somebody who's been doing it for years, from what I read.
Right, she shouldn't have been able to do any of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then, do we think women are soldiers? So you have the Israeli woman dressed up as a soldier.
I'm never gonna. I mean, I've seen women in uniform my whole life because I grew up on army bases in the 70s and 80s, and that was a very typical scene. But I'm thinking back to my memories and thinking, yeah, they look like they're playing dress up. And well, hopefully this changes, but no, they didn't get the same level of training. This is the men. They were allowed to be there, but this Israeli soldier, obviously, if you're living in Israel, you need to train for your own protection. But
she looks like she's dressed to be in combat, not just in defense.
She's very pretty, and she looks like she's dressed to recruit. Mm-hmm. Because of that, right? So that's another reason I like putting her right next to Joan of Arc, because the style of that painting was done in the 1920s.
Yes,
and it could be an advertisement. It was done in that kind of illustrative style, but she was canonized in the 1920s. That's why the paintings of her from that era. It wasn't because they were trying to make it look like an advertisement or an illustration. It just did because that's when she was canonized.
Because it looks like 1920s advertisement.
Yeah, yes, it's 1920s, right? But so the Israeli soldier, similarly to me, looks a bit like advertising just because she's so pretty,
mm-hmm.
And she's wearing armor and it's kind of a semi-formal pose that she's in. It's respectful, but still, she still looks a little bit like Barbie in combat.
Well, they both do. I mean, it's a good juxtaposition. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You brought another category problem. It's like, is this truthful or propaganda, right? It's rhetorical. Yeah. It's persuasive. Both of them are meant to be. The images are meant to be rhetorically persuasive, using the mm-hmm. female characters as a kind of it's a trap, trick, lure, deception. It's like both of them confounding the sense of what a soldier means.
Yes, but what was more confounding about Joan, though, was it that she was, according to the people of her time, she was clearly touched by God, right? She was clearly led by him to do this. She couldn't have gotten other people to follow her otherwise.
Well, you could say, I mean, this art, the women in the military now, for a similar reason. I mean, this is an interesting. It's like there's a power, and this is what we've been following of feminism. No, but the thing is, we've been with feminism saying, okay, so the next layer that you just broke into was interesting, which is the power of this kind of category breaking, which is the point about mm-hmm. What Mary Douglas was playing with in the Purity and Danger. Where is the sacred in all this? We're gonna have a part 3 on this one because We're not going to get through all of our slides tonight either.
Probably not.
No.
Yeah.
And the long arc of what we're trying to deal with is, okay, one, the definitional question, which we worked on last week and which we've hopefully done a better job on this week with the sandwiches and the nationalism, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know what it is, but your definitions are not going to be as, you're always going to be making exceptions for your definition to fit what you think is your true definition. It's odd, right? It's like except for the peeps with the hot dog. I mean, there'll be something that you can say that's definitely not it, but most of the time, otherwise the categories have there's an essence to them, but defining what accidents belong to the essence is harder than it seems. And then you get to the point of saying, okay, so we've got some kind of category here, soldier, and we mix a category with it, woman, who isn't usually a soldier, and then it starts having power, which I think is different from the peeps and the hot dog.
Yeah. The peeps and the hot dog was just exploding categories for humor. Like, this is not something these are not two things that go together, right?
But why shouldn't a woman soldier be a peeps with a hot dog?
Right. We're told a woman in armor is something that should go together. And at Joan's time, it was something that should not go together.
Well,
but isn't that still
not
true?
Sure it's should. Okay, so Felix Rootber is saying mascot. Is it real or is it Memorex? Well, okay, they are. Joan was definitely a kind of mascot for the people that she was leading, because she was a symbol of France, right? That they were going to recover France for the Dauphin. Right. The Israeli soldier, woman dressed as soldier, is a kind of mascot too for modernity. Yes.
Well, she's a mascot for modernity, and I think in that picture, she's a mascot for a country that is perpetually at war, and where service is tied in with patriotism. Right,
but why make the women do that? I mean, it's an interesting premise that we've come up with.
It's a very secular country.
Yeah, but to say secular means that you don't have distinguished gender roles.
I think,
or that secular means we have no firm categories anymore. That's it's like the only things that are sacred have clear boundaries. But we just said that the deciding who is Israeli, they had to make the Ethiopian Jews redefine themselves in order to belong to their category.
Yep.
Which was both a secular category and a religious category. Silent Draco was saying probably demanded the Ethiopians learn the Talmud. Okay, so they had to be in an intellectual
No, I actually don't know what it involved. Yeah. I don't know if any study was involved.
Okay. He's left and gone to bed, so he'll have to tell us later.
Yeah, so they and the same thing seems to be happening all over. In Israel, I think that the traditional male and female roles have been just resigned to the religious or the ultra-religious, and everybody else is secular. And I see the same thing happening here, not for the same reasons, but it seems that you only get married and stay home and have kids and not have a career outside the home if you're religious, right? That didn't used to be true. No. But it seems to be a widening gap. I think I've seen it kind of turn a little bit, which is good. But not that I don't want people to be religious. I do, but I just don't. I don't think it should automatically fall to women to say, okay, you have to put armor on now and be a soldier and go to war because you're not a religious person who stays home and has kids.
But I mean, this is a primary category, right? It's one of so nation has been this primary inclusive category that have been defined. It's like the clean and unclean animals are meant to be defining Israel, like as a nation. The different sandwiches are like, is it a hot dog, a hamburger, a taco? Or I mean, they're
that's interesting.
They're defining subsets of American cuisine, but so tacos don't count as sandwiches because they're Mexican rather than English.
But a hamburger is German.
See, You start scratching these things, and they have way more.
And go back further. The hamburgers. Do you call people from Hamburg hamburgers? The hamburgers got it from the Tartars, didn't they?
I don't know, but
I think they did.
So the one of the main claim here, right? One of the reasons that people react the way they do to the definition of nation, with the kind of fury of their categories being broken, the fury that they do, is because I think Mary Douglas was actually right, that when you start worrying about the categories that things are placed in your social frame, your ordering of your world, you are in fact engaging with the way in which you are engaging with the sacred. And I think she wrote the book moderately early in her career, and I think she did more. She says in her preface to this one that she wrestled with the ideas further along. She does not, in Period in Danger, I think, manage to come up with a convincing sort of feel of the sacred. She's right that somehow these pollution fears and these categorizations are to do with it's our sense of reality and our sense of the power of the sacred, but it's one of those fog problems. Like, the closer you get into it, the more it starts dissolving around you, and you can't feel it anymore. And then when you get outside of it, you can, oh yeah, Joan should not have been, Joan wore armor that breaks all the categories. She's clearly touched by God.
Or she's clearly a heretic. Right?
Or she's clearly a heretic. Okay, so now we have, marriage. How about we'll do marriage next? Can we spend the next half hour on arguing about marriage?
Yeah.
So the soldier one is just like occupation roles, right? Or role of activity, whether the women should be doing that, which is a gender role. Marriage as a particular kind of social frame.
As a social frame, it's one man with one or multiple women, depending on your religion, or one man and one woman if you're a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been redefined by certain people over the past 20 years to mean any two adults. And then it's redefined again to mean any three adults or multiples.
Or your pets.
A throuple.
Okay, so I know you.
Or yourself. Yeah, self-marriage is a thing too, right?
Okay.
Which is really just an excuse to give yourself a party, girls. Come on.
What?
Anyway, it's just an excuse to give yourself a party and lots of gifts.
You do that if it's your birthday. Why do you? It's like
you could do, yeah.
So this one is obviously one that has made people very upset as a category breaking. I've perpetually in arguments with Sigma Game on whether or not we appreciate how we managed to get to this point where all of these images will be recognized. I mean, what's interesting is the ones you chose, right? One, there's a mass, right? So it's an act which, many people don't believe is necessary for the marriage. And I'm sorry to have to explain to you that indeed it isn't, because that's not what makes the marriage. That's a blessing of the marriage. The marriage in medieval terms had already happened out on the porch, because they didn't actually exchange vows for a marriage.
Yeah.
Inside the church.
Yeah.
They do it at the church door, right? You do your vows and then you go in, right? So that we have the marriage, the exchange of vows at the altar. It's like, oh my gosh, that's breaking categories. It's as bad as Joan in armor, because the mass is different from the marriage itself.
Yeah, this is explained to me when I got married in a Catholic ceremony. It's like, no, the marriage ceremony takes place before the nuptial mass. It's just really an exchange of vows, and it's really quick.
Right. And then you get to have mass, which is great.
But you may kiss the bride is not a thing. That's a Hollywood thing. That's not necessary either.
I have decided that you may, wouldn't it be great if everyone was so chaste and everything that you may kiss the bride? It's the first kiss you've ever had, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that would be intense.
That would be something.
We get to kiss right now. We haven't yet before. Okay. So
yeah. The man in a Catholic ceremony, the man and the woman, they're the ones. They're the ministers of the sacrament. They marry each other. The priest just blesses their
he's a
union.
witness to it. Actually,
He's a witness.
Technically,
He's a witness to it. Yeah.
The priest is one of the witnesses.
Right. And he'll bless your rings, but the thing is, you can have a priest bless objects all the time. So
right. You can have sacramentals and blessings and such. So the mass, it's not the marriage. We get that, right? That's
it's not. There isn't. One of the reasons I picked a Catholic couple there and during a mass is because their focus isn't even on each other. Their focus is on the altar. And I thought that was just a difference in the other pictures that I saw where the couples were focused on each other.
Right.
It's just, that was just the difference I saw was,
Well, and that is huge, right? Because so interestingly, when people are talking about marriage, ironically, the way most people, talking about the secular and the sacred, right? The way most people talk about marriage in a Protestant context, it fits all of the bottom images perfectly. Right. The two women, one dressed as a woman, one dressed as a man. Again, the other two women, one dressed as a man, one dressed as a woman, and then two men, both dressed as men. Why doesn't one of them dress as a bride? That's a puzzler.
No, but I'll tell you what I did see, which I'm not sure. I don't think I picked that one. Where some of the male to male couples, one man would have a boutonniere, the other would have practically a huge spray of flowers up and down his lapel, and almost like a bouquet.
So they are doing a
kind of
boy girl
roles. They were kind of doing that.
Roles. Yeah. So some of the more interesting things that Douglas talks about are in fact around sex, which is interesting, and some of the best things she's saying, that like the purity problems, particularly around adultery and competition. Oh, this was great, right? Okay, so she's talking at in different contexts in which the society. Let's see. She's like, okay. Okay, this is where she finds the power of everything in these pollution beliefs, and therefore what pollution beliefs are showing about the structure of the society, which is interesting. Okay, so she says now after 140 pages in, right? Now is it's a short book too. Now is the time.
That will be short for you.
Yes, the time to identify pollution. Granted that all spiritual powers are part of the social system, which is her primary claim, right? Anthropologically, she's saying spiritual powers take their oomph from the social system itself. They express it and provide institutions for manipulating it. So pollution, spiritual powers express the social system and provide institutions for manipulating it. This means that the power in the universe is ultimately hitched to society, since so many changes of fortune are set off by persons in one kind of social position or another. I think this is where Fox is talking about the sociosexual hierarchy. He is on to something, definitely, right? It triggers, everybody's going to be in fights, on his Substack constantly over Sigma Game, because what he's describing is social structure. And what Douglas would say is that you're ending up in pollution fears, which I think is a lot of what plays out in any discussion like that, because people's sense of the power of reality is hitched up to the way in which they see the structure of their society.
Yes.
Okay. Saying, but there are other dangers to be reckoned with, which persons may set off knowingly or unknowingly, which are not part of the psyche and which are not to be bought or learned by initiation and training. These are pollution powers which inhere in the structure of ideas itself and which punish a symbolic breaking of that which should be joined or joining of that which should be separate. It follows from this that pollution is a type of danger which is not likely to occur except where the lines of structure, cosmic or social, are clearly defined. A polluting person is always in the wrong. right? She's trying to it's like you're in the presence of the structure itself when you feel these effects, right? And the pollution is an effect of breaking through the different structures. So in her understanding, it's primarily social, right? The idea of society is a powerful image. It is potent in its own right to control or to stir men to action. This image has form. It has external boundaries, margins, internal structures. Its outlines contain power to reward conformity and repulse attack. There is energy in its margins and unstructured areas. For symbols of society, any human experience of structures, margins, or boundaries is ready to hand. Okay. So, and then she goes off the rails to the point. I think when she starts trying to figure out what kinds of things are good for making these sorts of symbolic structures, animals and houses and things like that. Okay. So, what she's then going to do is try to figure out at what point these kind of ruptures and tensions are, like, margins are dangerous, blah, 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 blah. And they're various dangers, right? 4 kinds of social pollution seem worth distinguishing. The first is danger pressing on external boundaries. The second, danger from transgressing the internal lines of the system. The third, danger in the margins of the lines. The fourth is danger from internal contradiction, when some of the basic postulates are denied by other basic postulates, so that at certain points the system seems to be at war with itself. Okay. The sexual stuff comes at the point where the system is at war with itself. And this I found really, really interesting. Okay. So she's talking about one particular society in which it's like, how did she play with this? Yeah. So this sounded to me like basically the sociosexual hierarchy stuff that Sigma Game was talking about. In which you end up with a society in which people are in competition in the way that sort of maybe we have in the past thought of it. I'm not sure. Anyway, so she says, okay, the whole society is especially likely to be founded on a contradiction if the system is one in which men define their status in terms of rights over women. She's writing in 1966. I think she picked up on this. If there is free competition between the men, this gives scope for a discontented woman to turn to her husband's or her guardian's rivals, gain new protectors and new allegiance, and so to dissolve into nothing the structure of rights and duties which had formerly been built around her. This sort of contradiction in the social system arises only if there is no de facto possibility of coercing women. This is important. This sort of contradiction in the social system arises only if there is no de facto possibility of coercing women. You can't force the women to do what you want. Right, so you can't beat them up. You can't do, it's like if in the social system you can't coerce the women. For example, it does not appear if there is a centralized political system which throws the weight of its authority against women. For example, in Muslim particular legal systems, right, where the legal system can be exerted against women, they cannot make havoc of the system. But a centralized political system is not one in which male status is mainly phrased in terms of rights over women. And he says that she's giving an example of a group that she studied who, the Lili, are an example of a social system which is continually liable to founder on the contradiction that female maneuvering gives to male dominance. All male rivalries are expressed in a competition for wives. If you're in that kind of situation, the women can manipulate you.
If the men are in competition for women, the women can manipulate them? Mm-hmm. Okay, so what happens in a society where the women can't manipulate the men?
That's when you have the centralized authority, a centralized political system which throws the weight of its authority against women. The women can't manipulate the men. I do think that's the okay. So we'll get
women can't manipulate men anymore today, can they?
Well, okay, this is where we come back to marriage, right? So our marriage,
because we don't have it.
No, the way, and this is what I was failing because I do not get to like hold forth in, oh my gosh, we lost everyone.
Oh,
they didn't want to talk about marriage.
That doesn't sound natural.
They've all gone
to
bed.
All the men left.
All the men left. They don't want to hear this. Okay.
They're talking about the M word. I told my girlfriend to watch this now. Just kidding.
The problem with marriage in the Western Christian tradition is it is fundamentally founded on the consent of both the man and the woman. It's like going back to Douglas grew up Catholic. I think she has some Catholic context here. The whole society is especially likely to be founded on a contradiction if the system is one in which men define their status in terms of rights of women. If you have married men have a higher status, right? They do.
Yeah,
right.
They always do.
If there is free competition between the men, so they have courting the women, right? This gives scope for a discontented woman to turn to her husband's or her guardian's rivals, gain new protectors and new allegiance, and so to dissolve into nothing the structures of rights and duties which had formerly been built around her. This has been the problem with, ironically, because the woman has to be able to say I do or not, creates the instability and the contradiction in our social structure around, I think, like men want to have rights over women, but the primary right that they don't have is to be able to force her into marriage. And that's been the case since the Middle Ages. It's all founded on the consent of both, including the man has to say I do, but so does the woman. And the reason that the church developed the practice that it did, going then before the mass, right? You have to do it publicly. You have to have the woman say it out loud so everybody else can hear, so they know that she's not been forced into it.
Okay. It had to be more than that, though. Just so they know she hasn't been forced into it, but also so that people can't, contract multiple marriages.
There's another layer to that the church is very against polygamy but the consenting, right? Because you can't lie and say I'm your husband and not. So the idea of monogamy is an interesting one socially, but here this problem is simply around the problem of consent and the social structure that it creates, and therefore the dangers that it creates and the contradiction. The contradiction, I say, and this is not going to be a popular opinion, the contradiction is playing out in the fact that for many people right now, all of these couples can consent to be married.
That's a problem?
Well, if it's 2 women and 2 men, they're fully married in this sort of philosophical claim
I see what you're saying.
The consenting adults, right?
2 consenting adults, right? Well, that's just a twisting of the original, the original meaning of it.
And a hot dog is a sandwich?
It wasn't 2 consenting adults. It was a consenting man and a consenting woman. It's always been that.
Right, but it's
even when the man
trying
had
to just demonstrate
wives,
how the category got stretched.
It's they're using a word and taking it completely out of context.
Okay, so what we did, and this is we have got 10 minutes. Marriage has also always been attached to a lot of other things socially and legally, like property and inheritance, because of children. Yeah. Right. The other confusing and confounding thing that the church does is give virginity a very high status, lifelong vows of virginity of very high status, and therefore extract people from having children and making that virtuous.
Well, they had plenty of children to go around.
Not really. Medieval Europe was not overpopulated. And not even.
No, but some families, some noble families might have been. I'm thinking of one who had 12 sons that caused a problem. But,
no, they solved that. They solved that with primogeniture and different this sort of inheritance of property and things like that. All of these things
caused a problem,
right? But what we're trying to understand right tonight is the sort of what happens when you start messing with people's. The sandwich is again, I know with sandwiches, oh dear, marriage and sandwiches. Make me a sandwich.
Make me a sandwich.
There's a proper true sandwich, and then people keep adding things. So the point where you got peeps and a hot dog, right? And you know, it's well, it's, you know, it's starch on the outside of the meat, right? How is that not a sandwich? And what Douglas is trying to explain is that society is organizing itself, in our sense of, I'm so tired because this is like way beyond even my usual ability to explain stuff. Mind you, nobody else can, so that's okay. That she's saying that the pollution categories express the structure of society, which brings in the sense of reality to it. And I think what she's trying to say is our base sense of reality is our interactions with other people. And therefore all of our pollution categories, in fact, are expressing something about our interactions with other people in these social situations that we have constructed. And the problem of natural versus not, I mean, this is where the anthropologists foundered, right? They couldn't figure out what humanity was because they kept finding so many different examples of different structural, different social structures.
But why would that have been a problem if they were okay with acknowledging that people had different parameters for their society, depending upon what geographical location they were in, what family group they were in?
Well, I will put it to you that most people having the nation argument also will have the it's a man and a woman for children argument about marriage. And the medieval conversation about marriage came out of whether or not Mary and Joseph were truly married, who never had sex and had no children.
Mm-hmm.
And they came up with the theologians came up with the consent. There was the consent in the legal situation for Rome was already part of it, but consensual marriage didn't bound their sexual relations. I mean, Christianity is trying really, really hard to do something really difficult, which is bound all of your sexual relations in this particular vowed relationship to which both consent, which is exclusive and legally binding. Therefore, no concubines, no sex with your, no. I mean, they still have slaves at this point, or they still have unfree people. Lords are not supposed to be having sex with their unfree, tenants. No first night, right? Therefore, Braveheart doesn't work. No prima nocta.
It's not real.
And the church is also trying to create categories in which people can vow themselves never to do this, right?
Yes.
To be monks and nuns and dedicated to God. So, your example of the Mass, right? That they're both looking at the Mass. The laity were not considered to be in the most perfect relationship with God. That was, the monks and the nuns who were completely devoted to God and not to someone else.
Right.
What's funny about it is I can know myself that I know the right definitions for all these things. I know what a nation is. I know what a sandwich is. I know what a marriage is. But all of these things that we've just tried to define actually have the same category problems as, well, they all have the same kind of category problems, interestingly. And yet we will be convinced that we know what they are because they bound our reality in the way that Douglas was trying to describe them.
I watched something interesting yesterday. A woman took her picture and she put him into portraits of different centuries, 16th, 17th, and 18th, right? Because she said, it was a funny title. She said, "You're not ugly, you're just born in the wrong century." But she's talking.
That's aesthetic problems, yes.
Right. What she's talking about was the portraiture habits back then. It was the artist's version of today's airbrushing. And so they would make them look more perfect. They would make their eyes larger, their nose smaller. They would be more sculpted here. And so she had herself originally, I'm going to put myself in this painting right here. And one of them was one of Marie Antoinette's portraits of something like that. And then she fixed it, right, to make it look more aesthetically pleasing.
Right.
Yeah. I forgot where I was going with this.
Well, I'm kind of like good thing we get to do this again next week because I think the things, I think we're getting to the sort of terror of the sacred slowly
Yeah.
through these. So Mary, I was talking at the beginning about how, frustrated the anthropologists became with their own practice. I mean, they started worrying about whether or not, they could actually, they became conscious of the fact that as anthropologists, they're on the outside describing these things. And I do like to play the exercise of, if you describe our social relations the way they describe these primitive peoples whom they've encountered, and, they have these odd beliefs. They put on these funny, glasses and go to and watch other people walk down the street together. And, it's a bonding exercise for them. It's like the parade, right? Or something that just their conventions of description make weirder some of the things that they're describing. So that they recognize they're never sure whether as anthropologists they're correctly evaluating what people are telling them. Is this superstitious? Is this gross? Is this disgusting? Am I, if I'm an anthropologist and I'm able not to see this as disgusting anymore, am I still able to understand it? They foundered as a practice, as a discipline intellectually, because they couldn't figure out the definition of human. Because I
think they were trying to not be judgmental.
Well, yeah, but they kept trying to figure out how do you describe it without triggering your own pollution response.
So that's what she means by pollution. She means imposing a judgment on somebody else's culture.
No, that's not what she means. What
does she mean?
She means the reactions internal to the culture, which, I mean, pollution is. Elon Musk made that gesture at the inauguration rally, right?
Well, nobody believed it was a Nazi salute. The people trying to defame him was, and it was kind of obvious.
These people, the women getting married, are polluting marriage.
Well, yeah, because they're choosing to use the aesthetic that was exclusive to a man and a woman exchanging vows in front of witnesses.
Okay, but what if they just did it? If they weren't wearing wedding clothes, but they just made vows together.
Yeah, that would be completely different.
Oh, we found one of your borders.
I think they found that they
could vow to be friends. They could vow to be, faithful to each other as friends.
Sure, they could. But the fact that they used that aesthetic...
I agree on that, right? I got in all sorts of trouble with the Catholics when I wrote something about Milo and John's marriage, and I was saying, you consented to be faithful to each other. That's what matters. Yeah. The sex part is, and in fact, the sex part is curiously complicated because, like if monastic brothers vow or soldier brothers vowed to be forever faithful to each other, is that bad? Right. So it's like your response is simply to the label marriage and the clothes.
It's the aesthetic they chose.
And the aesthetic.
Right. It's the aesthetic. They were sending a message that we're exactly like a man and a woman. No, you're not. That's absurd. It's as absurd as some guy named William changing his name to Leah. Right.
We haven't gotten to that one yet. It's 10 o'clock. We're stopping now.
And beating all the girls and swimming. It's there's no category change here. It's just an aesthetic. You put ponytails on your head and changed your name. You're still a man, right? So
you guys now know where we're going with this. We are testing the boundaries of our ability to extend our categories or not, and hopefully explore why. I mean, the thing is, I think what Douglas would say, society can't exist without them, right? You're defining your interactions with each other by way of these boundaries and categories that you place around things. And so the pollution fears are triggers of simply crossing one of those boundaries. The peeps are polluting that hot dog, right? It's stepped across a boundary that has no, and the part where I read, she's saying that, it's simply the pollution things are just triggered. They don't even have to be intentional. You can end up in a polluted situation by accident, but that doesn't matter. It's still just as taboo, right?
Yeah, I mean, so the lesbian couple exchanging vows using the aesthetic of actual marriage. maybe they weren't trying to trigger people. Maybe they just have a fundamental lack of understanding of what marriage is. That's entirely possible.
Well, I think
in this country over the past 50 years.
The clothing and stuff was symbolic for them. It was, I mean, the pictures you showed are, for me, they're all quite, they're formally dressed and they're all in,
It looked like a big troll to me from my perspective. It did. Yeah. It's Madonna wearing, stigmata in her video and dancing in front of St. Martin de Porres statue because she thinks piety is sexy. She doesn't think piety is sexy. She's just being icky. Yeah, this was
okay, but
40 years ago.
sexiness is always boundary breaking. That is That is a fundamental problem of.
But she was boundary breaking for the sake of boundary breaking, and then you just start. It's just self-referential pseudo art at that point. Yeah.
I've brought you to the edge.
You getting punchy yet?
Are you feeling punchy yet? Yes, exactly. No. Well, the thing is, these are where's our feeling of sacred and power come from, and that is, I mean, fundamentally, that's what Douglas would, I think, trying to figure out. Because without these, I mean, the abominations and the animal, the clean and unclean animals and stuff, they're saying something about where the sacred is. And like I said, I'm not sure in this book she ever made it, but she was on the right track of trying to figure out, it's like, where is it that we feel the force of the taboo? What is it? And that's what we are going to continue to try to figure out. And I'm going to hopefully that I've triggered Casey enough that we can keep going next week on it.
Oh, that's not hard to do.
Okay, very good. All right. So we will now break the boundary of this live stream and say thank you for joining us. Like and subscribe and follow our newsletter so that we can send you links and it's all in the description in the video, right? Links in the description to all of our work and how to subscribe to us and get on the newsletter list so you can get more footnotes and reading. Night, everyone.